good evening, and once again, time for me to talk on Sunday night about the previous week's work and the week to come. And most of the times that I do this, you see me from someplace either on campus or at my home, working from my dining room table, my living room, my kitchen table. And tonight it's from a little bit of a different setting because, as you may see things, maybe the light flashing a little bit in the background. This is from a hotel room in suburban Philadelphia, in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania, where I've been here for most of the weekend in my role as a tennis coach with the post-university men's and women's tennis teams at the East Regional ITA tournament. And ITA stands for Intercollegiate Tennis Association, so this was the Division II East Regional Championships, and very proud to tell you we've had the best showing our team has ever had in this tournament. We entered the season as the 7th ranked team in the East, and on the men's side. The women's side, we are unranked but have made just immeasurable strides, and this weekend showed it, where we really we're going toe to toe with players from the top 3 or 4 teams from the East. We've done extremely well. Couldn't be prouder of my group of student athletes than I am tonight. But it's a long couple of days. You spend 13, 14 hours literally on a tennis court coaching and working with young people. It's makes for a long day, but an extremely rewarding day. And I think just another comment on my interest in sport, what it means to me, how much an interest I take in all angles, and just thinking a little bit about getting ready to do this video tonight, what it took to pull off a tournament like this. And it's just a small scale of what we see going on when we do our reading and look at things like sports franchises. And what does it take to organize an event? What does it take to organize a team? What does a team mean to a community? These are all topics for the upcoming week, and I think I did think very often of them on a much smaller scale as I watched, literally the neighborhood pizza parlors do a tremendous business around the venue where the event was held, the amount of food being delivered, the amount of people coming and going. Sporting events do this for a community, and one of the arguments we'll see this week is, what value does a franchise have to a town, to a region, to an entire state? And there are different arguments on it. Some would argue that the economic impact is tremendous. Others would argue that it's fleeting and only takes on maybe a bit of a marginal character, only increasing slightly that growth or that presence of what would happen anyway. So these are some really interesting things I want you to read. And if you look at the stuff from the Boston Federal Reserve, that's important again this week. The articles on the meaning of a sports franchise to a town. And I'd really, when I say town, I really mean it on that scale. Not just the huge cities. Here in the central Connecticut region where I live, there's been a large controversy of a AA baseball team moving from New Britain, Connecticut to the state capital in Hartford, Connecticut. A move of all about 12 miles. But what is this going to do to New Britain, a city of 100,000 people maybe, to moving to Hartford, which is only a slightly larger city, but the city of Hartford is willing to build a 9,000 seat stadium to accommodate this AA team. And one of the arguments is it's going to provide tremendous economic development in an underdeveloped area of Hartford, revitalize this neighborhood, bring things back to life and to prosperity in a very rundown area. We're going to see if it works. And it's been quite controversial. And I think you need to form your own opinions on this. We've just seen the whole episode of the Olympic bid for the Olympic Committee and the U.S. Olympic Committee awarding the Olympic bid to Boston to compete for the Olympic Games in 2024, and I believe, and finding that the city of Boston the populace and the government really didn't support the bid, and it got withdrawn. And now Los Angeles is going to be bidding for that right to host the games. Well, what does that mean to a community? What does an event, a singular event, not that it has anything to do with sport, but here I am in Philadelphia this weekend, and they're making preparations for the visit of Pope Francis next week. I'm already seeing signs for how they're going to route traffic around center of the city. It was very difficult to get around Philadelphia because of all the preparations and plans being made. Well, this is the type of things that goes on with any major event. How about a sports franchise where these things happen multiple times a year? What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you right down to your neighborhood? These are the things we're going to be looking at and working with. The other thing that features in week 5 is, of course, what I'm calling the midterm exercise. And you notice it's not really an exam. It takes the form of an essay revolving around a problem that I found typical. And actually last year I had a great example because last spring when class came to doing this exercise, it was right at that time in basketball season where the problem that's presented is out there for you. And as an aside, this problem, through a very interesting story, happened to end up being talked about with an NBA owner who thought it was a really legitimate comment and a great question on what typically goes on in the league. So, and I'll fill you in on that later. So you're going to see this week there's no discussion board. It's time to work on the essay. So the essay really asks you to look at a lot of the things that you've discussed and learned and read about so far, and brings in the concepts of marketing, of revenue sharing, of ticket sales, of event management, of marketing. All these factors come into this question, and it's the seemingly perennial issue of an NBA team, a fictitious NBA team, being in a situation where, with about 10 games to go, they've got to make a decision as to whether to make a final push to make the playoffs or to just pack it in, tank it, if you will, and make sure they get a good draft choice. And what I'm asking you to do is read the scenario carefully, and then from an ownership perspective, from a high-level business and economic perspective, answer the question: do you push for the playoffs, or do you look for the draft pick? There are a lot of economic issues at stake here, and it's a question and an exercise that I think you'll find very interesting. So forgive the lateness of the posting of the video. I was involved in I told us not to wear our fans hat, but I was wearing my coach hat pretty heavily for the last few days, and I think I spoke earlier of the results. So that's a really rewarding experience for everyone. Thanks for your patience with everything, and I'll see you next week. Good luck with the exercise.